Hi, I'm Luciano Pellegrini, and next recipe is going to be a spelt pasta. Actually, kind of looks like macaroni, even though they're called cavatappi, with pork sausage and plum tomato sauce. We're going to start with the sauce first. We have a saucepan here, ready to go. Of course, heat it up, to which I added some olive oil, and to which I will add some butter. Now, this is not a non-stick pan, so I added some butter so that it will help my sausage, whenever I put it in, not stick to the pan. I found that if I added only olive oil, I would always have a mess. Like this, it's actually much better. And going to brown that a little bit. So while that happens, and also want to make you know that I have a pot there with boiling water for my pasta to cook, so that I don't lose any time. I'm going to chop some onion. About one small onion or half of a medium one. Now, I don't want a really fine chop, but I don't want it to be too coarse either. So definitely sort of like an 1/8 of an inch cube. And a couple of garlic cloves. I'm going to slice those up. Now this is homemade sausages, actually made it myself. I ground the pork and added just salt, pepper, some garlic, and my old grandfather sausage mix spice recipe that I finally got after many years of begging. And that includes spices like cloves and nutmegs and cinnamon. And I'm not crying just because the sausage smells so good, it's actually the onion. So I'm actually going to add the onion and the garlic in with the sausage. And you want to do this over a very high, heat source, fire, so as high as it goes. You don't want the meat to simmer or to let out water and then it will just poach. You always want to have that frying sound present. So fire as hard as it will go. And then here we'll prepare our next ingredients, which is going to be some plum tomatoes. They're just regular pear tomatoes, canned pear tomatoes. I'm just going to take the fruit themselves and then just cut them in half and then cut them into 4 or 5 pieces. Some are bigger than others, so I just cut them 3 times lengthwise. And then I return this to the juice. Try not to lose anything. And here I have my clean old towel. And for those who don't know, how do they make canned tomatoes? Well, they actually harvest the tomato, and they just go through a process of a sizing process. So they want tomatoes of the same size to be put in the same can, so the cooking time, so it affects the cooking time the same. And then they go through a peeling process. So they actually go through boiling water, and then they go through rollers so that the skin comes off. And then they get put into these cans. They're layered into the can. And then throughout the whole process, they collect the juices that come out of the tomato through the peeling and everything. And then they just fill the can up with the same juices. And then they close the can, and then they just cook them for a few hours, 2, 3, 4 hours, until they're ready. And then they just stock them for a few months before they actually get put into the market. And then all of a sudden you find your supermarket, and voila, you got plum tomatoes. So here is our sausages braising nicely. Sometimes I find when you have those clumps and they don't want to break up, I use a potato masher, and I just mash down those big globs of sausage. Oh, something's burning there. And then today we are going to add a generous dose of red white wine. I'll save some for later. And then we're going to let that evaporate. So I haven't seasoned the sausage, obviously, because it has all the condiments it needs. I'm actually going to test the ragu on its earlier stage before I add any salt or pepper to it. So we're going to let the red wine dry out. In the meanwhile, we actually are going to drop the pasta in the water. Again, this is a quick made ragu. It boils for like 8 to 10 minutes. Here I have a pasta that will take 8 minutes to cook. So before I actually want to add the tomato, but I want to talk to you first of all about the pasta. So here we have some boiling water, which I've salted previously, has to have plenty of salt in it so that the pasta will acquire flavor. And this pasta is made with spelt flour. Spelt is the forefather of actual wheat, the wheat germ, and it was used by our ancestor in medieval Europe, Europe up to 60,000 years ago. And it's making a comeback. It used to be used as animal feed, and now it pops up as on some of the most quoted restaurants in the world, and they started making pasta out of it. And it's actually a great pasta for anybody that might have a problem with carbohydrates. It is, of course, a whole wheat or a whole spelt pasta. It is not being processed. Everything that was in the wheat is actually there, and it has a very high content, protein content in the pasta, and a lot of complex carbohydrates that makes it preferable to it. So we are actually about 8 minutes away. The red wine is dried out. I'm going to add the tomato to it, and about as much volume in water as I add in tomato to the sauce. And so here I have my ragu, and I'm going to move it over to this burner because I like it better. And then we're going to drop our pasta. you can, very abundant water. And we're going to stir it a little bit. And then we're just going to put a lid on until the water starts boiling again. One thing about pasta, you want the water to boil when the pasta goes in, and you want the water to start boiling as soon as possible. Otherwise, you kind of ruin the texture of the pasta. That's why you put a lid on the pasta. However, careful, because it will release a lot of starch right off the bat, and it'll bubble up and make a mess on your stove. Anyway, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. And here we have our ragu that is about ready. And as you can see, it's actually not simmering. It's got a nice vivacious boil to it. I'm going to taste the pasta now, make sure that it is al dente. So I usually take one out, and then I just try it al dente. Oh, perfect. So I'm going to actually drain the pasta. Now what I like to do, I always like to save some of the water that the pasta has been cooked in with. And just in case the sauce becomes too dry, then I add some of that liquid into the pasta dish. So this is one of the dishes where I actually finish cooking the pasta in the sauce. So again, the ragu was at a nice rolling boil, and I put the hot pasta in, things didn't stop. And so I'm still going at a very like medium hot to hot flame, or a medium to high setting if you have an electric stove. And what you do is you kind of want to take the stuff from the bottom and put it on top. So now I added all the ingredients together. I'm kind of going to taste a little bit of the sauce just to see where I'm at season-wise. Oh, that's excellent, but still a little bit of salt. See, I'm very comfortable with the fact that I get to the end and I still have to add a little bit of salt or perhaps a pinch of pepper, because if it's the opposite, you're lucky in taking it out. So you always kind of want to be a little shy at the beginning, and then you make it up at the end. Now this doesn't really need any additional liquid added to it. What we're going to add is perhaps a little bit of chopped parsley, just for color. Now, if you notice, actually I've picked a round saucepan, a saucepan with round side, also because it helped me at the end stirring the pasta up. So of course, if you have that, that would be preferable. I'm going to add a little cheese, and maybe a little more. Yeah, lots of cheese. It doesn't hurt. And I'm actually going to take it off the flame. The cheese is going to help absorb whatever remaining liquidy sauce there was and thicken things up. And isn't that beautiful? And even though you have pork sausage in it, somewhat healthy. And voila. And then we're just going to sprinkle some more Parmesan cheese over the top. And then a little bit of parsley. And then a little bit of olive oil. And there it is, a pasta dish fit for kings. Buon appetito.